Hello there, Flip here, and today a bit late, but we're going to be going over the Luna 4 banner units, which is going to be Columbina and Zibai obviously, with the rerun units being Neuvillette and Ineffa, and we will just be talking about how valuable all of these characters are, and whatever has changed since their last rerun, or for the debut units, we'll just talk about how good they're shaping up to be, and concluding the video by discussing their early vertical investment, and whether or not it's better to go for their constellations or weapon, or skip both. But before we do that, as always, if at any point during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Kenton's meta and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to my lovely channel members, your support means the world to me, and I've somehow stalled this video enough to where we're now in the holiday season, so happy holidays to all of you. And also, right now Varessa and Shalonin are finally here, so if you'd like to cut down on the costs while going for them, then I would like to announce the sponsor for today's video, LD Shop. LD Shop is a very safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to get Primo Gems at a great deal starting from 15% off, while keeping your data safe. As for transactions, you only need to type in your UID and region, as you can see me doing here. Just needed to quickly refresh my welkin, and as you can see it's here. And make sure to use my link, as that way you'll receive an extra 15% off coupon, as well as a 5% off coupon which can save you up to $50. LD Shop goes through official channels as well, meaning that you won't lose any of the in-game benefits like first time top-up bonuses, so no need to worry. And additionally, because LD Shop is so great, users who spend over $80 will receive a VIP membership which rewards you with free welcome moons. So head over to ldshop.gg using my link in the description below. What are you waiting for? Thanks to LD Shop for sponsoring this video, now back to it. Let's start off with the moon maiden herself, Columbina, and her value is actually in a very interesting position. So if you don't know what she does, I've already made a video covering her kit in depth, but to summarize, she will enable all lunar reactions when she's on a team by herself, and her skill will apply continuous Hydra for the next 25 seconds. While Columbina's skill is active, when lunar reactions are triggered, Columbina will accumulate gravity of that lunar reaction, and when enough gravity is generated, she'll be able to deal direct lunar damage of the type of gravity she accumulates. And then her burst is just a team-wide buff to lunar reaction damage, with her main passive giving further unique buffing to each different lunar reaction. Most of Columbina's pulling power does go towards her sub DPS potential, as her max gravity attacks do a ton of damage, and then there is of course her unique buffs to each of the different lunar reactions, as they're very strong. So in terms of value, Columbina's really dependent on you to have another Krai 5-star, whether that is a Ineffa or Llama to unlock some of the strongest wheelchair cores, or that is just pairing her with a Krai DPS like Ineffa or Flynn's, and making them now contenders for the top DPS spots. And if you have any of these characters or plan on getting them as well as Zibai, then I think Columbina just becomes a must-pull unit for you, as she is the designated lunar character, and all of the lunar units see both a strength and value increase from having Columbina on their teams, as it just gives them more options. Like I've already discussed this especially on Twitter, but via just having Columbina and Ineffa on your teams, they are so strong to where it makes any on-field unit just reach like the 90 to 100k DPS range, maybe a bit less since Columbina was nerfed, but you get the point. Columbina is a very powerful unit and currently enables the strongest teams in the game alongside the Krai DPSs. She just doesn't really do anything outside of that. Like, she is a Hydra character, so you can just slap her on any team and you get lunar reactions which can help with some shield bosses, but is that really enough to warrant you pulling for Columbina? Which in my opinion I don't really think it is. So again, if you have any of the Krai 5-stars, she's a must pull. Otherwise I don't really think you lose anything by skipping her. Also, just to clarify to any smartasses, by Krai 5-star I do mean the lunar reaction units. You can delete your comment now. Columbina is also guaranteed to rerun once this version, so maybe in the future there's a new lunar reaction character that you're interested in, which makes her a better pickup for you in a few months. Let's now talk about the next debut character, Zibai, and again I've already made a video covering her in depth, but she is just Ineffa and Flynn's, but Geo. Her playstyle is very similar to Flynn's, but instead of enhanced elemental bursts, it's enhanced elemental skills, and regarding her value, theoretically she's a very strong DPS, being competitive with the other high tiers like Movika and Skirk, as well as the other Krai DPSs, but her being on par with them comes with extremely big asterisks. For one, the biggest gatekeeper of Zibai's strength is going to be her reliance on Iliga, who's a 4-star most likely running alongside her. Going from C0 to C6 Iliga, I fucking didn't have to say that. Going from C0 to C6 Iliga is like a 20k DPS increase overall, and anyone should know by now how hard it is to snipe 4-star copies. Then not only that, but Columbina is also another 20k DPS increase to Zibai teams. Zibai is running in the same version as Columbina, so to make Zibai competitive with the top tiers, you're going to want both an Iliga with decent cons, and Columbina, which can be a lot of pulls for one patch. I am assuming Zibai and Columbina will be on different halves, but if you are someone planning on maining her, your best strategy strategy is actually to skip Columbina, and then go really hard on Zibai's banner, which can hopefully get you a C6 Iliga, and while pulling for a C6 Iliga, you should be able to get a C1 or a C2 Zibai, and running a C1 or a C2 Zibai with a C6 Iliga is much better than running Zibai Columbina with a lower Constellation Iliga, so that would be my recommendation for navigating Zibai teams. Regardless, even missing one of these pieces, she's still a competent DPS, and one benefit of her is that she's extremely easy to play. She built a ton of defense with high interruption resistance, and her main combo is just getting her to her last attack and pressing skill, giving her a simple gameplay loop, which is the same comfort someone like Flint has. So she has good baseline damage that can spike to top 3 levels if you have all her pieces like an Iliga with decent amount of cons and Columbina. She's very easy to play and pilot, and her last team slot has a decent amount of flexibility too, so it would be hard to not have a complete team for her as long as you get Iliga, and she also makes Churi relevant again, which is very nice. If you haven't pulled a Krai DPS so far, you really won't be disappointed with Zibai, especially if you've been saving for a while, but if you do currently have a Krai DPS, then you're better off just getting Columbina instead to hyper boost those teams. Now let's move on. Do you guys remember when I said before Ineffa released that she's one of the most valuable sub DPS units in the game? Well, it looks like that aged amazingly, as even till this day Ineffa's putting up crazy numbers, and thank God she was released before Krai, as she doesn't really have that many restrictions with her kit. And hell, Ineffa is even getting buffed in Lunar 4 with a new artifact set, but I'm getting ahead of myself, let's go back a bit. So Ineffa's an electro sub DPS that shines when you have constant Hydra on your team to trigger Lunar Charged, and thankfully EC teams are some of the most flexible in the game, being used in Overvape teams, pure Lunar Charged, and Hyperbloom teams, giving Ineffa a wide range of applications. On release till now, these archetypes are still her best, but what has changed are the units within the archetype. Most notably, we have Flint, who is her dedicated DPS, that further buffs Lunar Charge damage, and creates one of the strongest duos in the game. Then we also have Ino, who's able to be the staple Hydra in a lot of Ineffa teams, as she offered more than Yolana and Furina in some cases, while also having a very low burst cooldown for short rotations, so Ino was just a nice comfy pick, whilst the game was shifting away from pure talent damage, and more towards reactions. And on the Dendra side of things, we have Llama, who alongside Ineffa creates the strongest Hyperbloom teams, regardless of who the Hydra slots end up being. Ineffa is such a powerhouse that quite literally whenever you have an excuse to use Hydra and Electro together, she will just be the best pick, and Columbina's further enhancing this new wheelchair core, that with just the 2 of their damage alone, and some buffing from a Verdescent unit, they are basically stronger than every team in the game pre-Natalin and pre-late Fontaine, which I don't know if that's a concerning sign for Genshin's power creep. Genuinely, I forgot to mention it, but Yahada too, only at C6 she's really nuts with her team-wide crit buffs. Ineffa is just such a strong off-field DPS with an insane amount of flexibility, and is also just the best Hyperbloom trigger in the game right now. If you have Flint, she's of course the must pull, and I think she's very important for Neuvillette too. And then for any of the Hyperbloom or Quick Bloom units like Cynos, Sethos, Alhaitham, and Tignari, while not a must, you would rather get Llama, she's also a big pickup for them as well. Hu Tao as well also benefits a lot from Ineffa, she relies on vape teams, and Ineffa is just stronger than the other setups you can run. And if you're a Yuri enjoyer, pulling Ineffa makes your Arlebina dreams real. Outside of that, no one really needs Ineffa, but I can't see her being a bad pickup for any account. We can now move on to the last unit of this version. So... There has been a lot of shade thrown Neuvillette's way, but honestly for a character this old he still holds up pretty well, and has lended himself pretty nicely to the Krai meta. Neuvillette is an on-field DPS that creates droplets with his skill and burst to fuel his enhanced charge attacks, and what makes Neuvillette special compared to other DPS is his range and AoE, as well as the fact that he isn't necessarily dependent on strict rotations, as he isn't tied to a special stance like other DPS, allowing him to freely be swapped out of and such. And also he's a Hydra unit, which is an element that can be played in a variety of different archetypes. Back in the day, Neuvillette was hailed as the best DPS in the game, as his hypercarry teams really just did some of the best damage in the game, while being very brain dead and comfortable with the amount of AoE and range Neuvillette had. Its lineups back then also averaged out to being somewhat AoE centric, and this was before Stygian Onslaught, so pure single target performance wasn't as important as it is now. But of course, over time stronger damage dealers just came out, and Abyss and Stygian are more single target focused, which impacted one of Neuvillette's main strengths. But taking after Raiden, Neuvillette just shifted away from being the main source of damage in his teams to being more of a driver, there to help facilitate strong off-field damage dealers like Ineffa, Durin, or Escoffier. A lot of people shit on Neuvillette due to this like, haha, wheelchair man, and while I do think it's funny, no other character is really able to utilize the off-field DPS as well as he does, because his kit, funnily enough, just lends himself to teams like this. He has long rotations where he's able to freely swap out, which is great for turret-based off-field DPS, as they can now get close to full uptime on both their turrets and buffs, and Neuvillette being Hydra just enhances them like Endurance Case to help him vaporize, or in Ineffa's case to help with LC procs. And it's not like Neuvillette is doing 0 damage on these teams, he just isn't the majority anymore. So nowadays, unless you're getting vertical investment on Neuvillette to use them as a carry, it is generally better to pick up a strong sub DPS like Ineffa or Durin, or hell Escoffier, and run him alongside them. I don't really think Neuvillette is someone you should really pull for, unless you like him or his playstyle, but he does have multiple teams across the 100k DPS mark, so he really isn't the worst thing ever, just not the powerhouse he once was. And keep in mind, most of his power is coming from the sub DPS he runs with, not necessarily himself, so they're usually just much stronger teams you can run with the supports rather than putting them in a Neuvillette's team. Just keep all of that in mind. Now, going from the most to least valuable units in this banner, I don't think it should surprise anyone, but if you have any of the Luna reaction 5 stars, then Columbina is close to a must pull for you, giving her the highest value. And then next I'm going to be slapping Ineffa, being one of the most potent sub DPS and sustains across the board, working well in almost every single archetype. Then lastly we have the 2 DPS units. Zibai is just a lot better than Neuvillette in my opinion, but you are going to have to commit to pulling a lot of copies for Illiga to make her feel very good. I guess that cleanly segues into my vertical investment section. We're starting with Zibai. Here's an early vertical investment infographic for her. Regardless of how good her signature looks, I would still recommend getting her constellations instead, just because getting her constellations means you're also getting more Illiga constellations, and having a C1 or C2 Zibai with a C6 Illiga, or even his C4, is a much better stopping point than having Zibai at C0 with like a C2 Illiga, but you have her signature. Moving on to Columbina, she's a very odd case, because I know people are mostly pulling her to be a support for Krai DPS, in which case you rather just get the Krai DPS's constellations, rather than getting anything on Columbina. Columbina's weapon is just for her personal damage. Columbina C1 mostly offers quality of life, whilst having some minor buffing and increasing her sub DPS, and then her C2 is a good mix of both personal damage and buffing. If you are pulling Columbina to support your Krai DPS, then you do want to go down the constellation route with Columbina, but once again prioritize the vertical investment on your actual Krai carry first. And then if you're someone who wants to play main DPS Columbina, then in that case I would recommend getting her weapon first, and then looking into getting her constellations. For Ineffa, here's her vertical investment infographic, but once again, like I said with Columbina, if you're using Ineffa as a support for like your Flins or something, you would just rather prioritize getting vertical investment on Flins. Having a C0 Ineffa is more than good enough, and then the rest of your pulls want to go towards Flins, or I guess Columbina since she's here. And then lastly, here's Neuvillette's. If Neuvillette mains just kept investing in Neuvillette's constellations and weapons, rather than pulling every new Neuvillette support, I feel like they would be much happier. Tome of the Eternal Flow is generally a bigger increase than what's reflected here, and helps in situations where you don't get full energy on Neuvillette, and Neuvillette C1 and C2 are pretty generic damage increases, with the C1 also increasing his quality of life. If you're starting from a weapon like Prototype Amber, I'd recommend getting Tome, but if you already have something like Sacrificial Jade even at R1, then I don't really think it matters what you pick. And in those cases, I think the Constellation route is better, as if you get Neuvillette C1, that gets you closer to a C2, which gets you closer to all those other constellations. But with that, I have nothing else to say regarding the Luna 4 banners, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment who you're pulling for Luna 4, as I would love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, thank you all so much for your continued support, it means the world to me. I love you all and are wishing you all very merry holidays. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.